The idea that like Kurds will be able to like piece it out and build the Iranian side of Kurdistan is ridiculous, because then Turkey comes into the fucking fold.
As the Iran conflict expands, there's reporting tonight that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for a potential military operation in Iran.
They say Tel Aviv looks like Gaza now. No, it doesn't, dude. That's fucking insane.
With U.S. backing. That's the Associated Press tonight. The Kurds are among the largest stateless ethnic group in the world, with roughly 30 million living.
Look. I'm sorry. When you hear a Fox News host get woke about the Kurds, just know that there's, there is an interventionist desire here, okay? Kurds are about to be used and abused as they have been over and over again in the region every single fucking time, only to be discarded, only to then like allow the Turks to come in and just like bomb their positions and create like a barrier territory. Just know that that's happening, because these guys don't give a fuck about the 35 million ethnic Kurds that live in this entire region that are a stateless population. They've never cared about that shit. Why the fuck would they care about it with Kurds? The only reason why they're acting like they give a shit, like they're radical leftists or whatever, the only reason why they act like they give a shit about it is because, they want to use and abuse the Kurds again.
As minorities in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria, the Kurds represent about 10% of the Iranian population. They make up about 15% of the population in Iraq. The groups in Iraqi Kurdistan have a long history of working with the U.S. during both the Iraq War and the battle against ISIS. Joining us now is Bafel Talabani, president of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan.
Are they stateless? Well, they are, as far as like there's no Kurdistan, okay? They're stateless in that regard, and the states that they live inside of are fairly oppressive to varying degrees. The only place that has like been able to carve out an actual Kurdish region, an autonomous region, has been Iraq, and that obviously came with the invasion. Rojava was supposed to be another one, and America totally was like, no, we're not doing that. Turkey doesn't want there to be any autonomous Kurdish regions unless those autonomous Kurdish regions are directly under the influence of Turkey. And I'm not super up to date with like the Iranian version of these incidents, but I do know that a lot of the Kurdish militias, like Kurds in Iran, are a part of the IRGC. They're a part of the armed forces. They're a part of the police. They're a part of like normal Iranian society, but there are still some Kurdish militia movements. They're just like super limited, right? And the ones that are super limited, it's very, Kurds will get mad at me and say, Hasan, how dare you fucking say this? You're a piece of shit. You're a Turkish ethno-nationalist. You're an ultra-nationalist. But like, let's be real. Some of the Kurds in Iran are working with the Mossad, okay?
The UK. Mr. Talabani, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's first start.
Because you fall for fake news? Okay.
Big picture, and paint the picture from where you sit of what you see with this war in Iran and what you think the implications are of it as it exists now.
We saw the hostilities start surprisingly, and it seems to be a massive escalation across all fronts. Kurdistan has come under attack from several different angles, and I'm not seeing any sign of a slowdown. If anything, I'm seeing an escalation.
Yeah, Kurds are not a monolith. Each faction has varying beliefs. Some would never fight for Israel. Exactly. And initially, a lot of the Kurdish militia movements historically have been revolutionary movements and Maoists and Marxist-Leninist movements. Okay? You immediately jumped on the Mossad Israeli news like without checking shit. Brother, that is fucking crazy. To act like there is no motion there is insane. Okay? And even the most like resistant groups, even the groups that are like saying that they don't want to do this, are basically saying we don't want to do this because America won't give us enough assurances. That doesn't mean that they don't have the ambition. Okay? Jesus Christ, you're making it seem like there's no reason You're making it seem like there's no reason for me to potentially assume that this is a part of their destabilization initiative in Iran. It very clearly is. It is. Some of the factions have said, of course, they're not going to be fucking working with Israel. Some of the factions have said, we would love to work with America and Israel. You just need to give us air support. And some of the factions have said, we will not go and work with Israel or America, unless you actually not only give us air support, but you also fucking send in troops alongside ours. You will hear this now.
So the U.S. is working on taking out missile sites and drone factories and that sort of thing. But as far as groups on the ground fighting the Iranians, this reporting that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for this operation, where does that stand?
There are a lot of Iranian Kurds that deserve dignity, and they deserve perhaps better treatment. But as for any actual preparation and armed Kurds inside Iran, there are elements, and there's lots of political organization. But most of the most effective fighting forces are actually...
What's your opinion on Kurdistan? My opinion on Kurdistan is that all of the fucking regional entities that exist currently have created a spectacular national security failure for themselves over and over again by not offering the Kurds dignity internally or not offering them statehood with autonomous regions. If they don't do that, then America is going to take advantage of that. It's that simple. You either build a Kurdistan with regional cooperation, or you build it as Israel. And I know Kurds get really mad at me when I say this, because they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? These are indigenous people. It's true. Yes, Kurds are indigenous to the region as opposed to Israelis who are not, right? But that still doesn't change the fucking function of a Western-backed Kurdistan. A Western-backed Kurdistan will always be a destabilizing factor. It's that simple. And it's understandable that none of the fucking regional actors would want that to take place, even if they are lapdogs of America themselves, like Turkey. Turkey is a vestige of American empire. Okay? Straight up. Turkey is an imperial vestige. And yet, they still have their own ambitions, because it turns out they still have their own, they still have their own interest in sovereignty, in maintaining some semblance of sovereignty. And they are understandably worried about Israel, especially when you have, Wall Street Journal op-eds being released. Naftali Bennett talking about how after Iran is done, the next step is Turkey. How can you look at every single thing that is unfolded in this fucking region at the behest of Israel and not assume that fucking Turkey is next? What do you think of Rojava? I love Rojava. As you guys know, one of my favorite people on the planet literally went and fought in Rojava.
Outside of Iran, they're on the borders here.
You had a conversation with President Trump. What was that like?
He was very charming. He was very kind. I could feel the emotion in his voice. He said that the Kurds were great fighters. My understanding is that the protection of their people in Iraq is paramount. He's very grateful for all the years that we have served and I have spent with your special forces.
You also talked to the Iranian foreign minister.
Yes.
What is their take on things from your call? Do you believe that regime change is possible the way it's heading right now?
The foreign minister, His Excellency, expressed great disappointment, if I'm honest with you. He indicated that as far as they were...
Abi biz de indigenous olmuyor muyuz? Evet. O da çok salakça bir yes. Like the people that say Turks are the colonizers are also ridiculous, because like it's been fucking, I think it's been long enough. You know what I mean? It's been long enough, guys. They didn't come from the steppes 78 years ago. Okay. Like they're definitely also, you can consider the Turks at this point an indigenous population in Anatolia. Okay.
Concerned the talks were going well.
It's a little too late for that conversation.
That a technical
also, none of this shit matters. I don't give a fuck. Like I said, if every single Jewish Israeli was indigenous to the population and they were advancing Israel's current interests in the region, that would still be unacceptable. Okay? Like, this is why I always get really mad when people do the genealogy and the ancestry arguments about Jews in Israel. Like, oh, they're all from Poland, they're from Lithuania, whatever the fuck. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit where they're from? What matters to me is they're killing people, okay? What matters to me is the Israeli state's actions. I don't give a fuck whether they have they have the capability to trace their ancestry back 3,000 years or 80 years or 100 years or 200 years. It literally doesn't matter even a little bit. It's just stop fucking killing people. I say the same thing about the Turkish state when they're killing Kurds, okay?
To sit together in the upcoming days to discuss technical matters. He indicated that this wasn't a war that they were looking forward to, but it was a war they would have to fight. It's definitely existential to them. I got the impression that they were open to some form of peaceful negotiation, which realistically is the only real solution to this issue. Regime change at the moment doesn't look on the cards from what I see. We've seen no uprisings anywhere. We've seen nothing of that. But it's early days, I expect.
The reason why I don't like this argument, by the way, the assessment here, is because he's saying, like, if there's an opportunity, we will fucking seize on it. And it's ridiculous. Right now, especially, if the Iranian government doesn't maintain its centrality, if the Iranian government withers away, if it's destroyed, Iran is balkanized. Okay? The idea that the Kurds will be able to like piece it out and build the Iranian side of Kurdistan is ridiculous, because then Turkey comes into the fucking fold.
The operation to be long and very difficult.
You think there are difficult days ahead. The president is suggesting that he would only accept unconditional surrender, in his words, to a reporter. So you don't see that right now, that this is on the cusp of happening?
I don't, sir. No, I don't see that right now. I think that the regime has been planning for this for 45 years, and you can expect a fierce resistance. The definition of regime change is important. What is the definition of regime change? And is there an off-ramp? Because some could argue that most mission parameters have been achieved. So is there an off-ramp where now perhaps we can try to resolve this diplomatically?
Yeah, I think that from the administration...
This is the best part of the conversation, where he's just like, he's saying, like, we don't want to take military action. We don't want to play a military role, and that regime destabilization will be harmful for all Kurds in the region, all Iranians, everyone. So he's right about that. Which side is Turkey and Azerbaijan over? Well, Turkey is more of a wild card. Turkey's on all sides all the time. That's just how Erdogan works, okay? He works in mysterious ways. One day he'll say, Israel, fuck you, we'll destroy Israel. And then the next day he'll be like, but we'll also send you weapons as well if you need it. Playing all sides all the time. That's the name of the game. Azerbaijan is more leaning on the side of Israel.
He's listening to them, taking out the ballistic missile capability, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, was the original objective going in.
Exactly.
The Israelis clearly are more wanting specific regime change to get a different leader in place that the U.S. and Israel can work with.
I understand that. And I think that, Mr. Baer, the conditions, I keep hearing the comparisons to 2003. I think the conditions are very different to 2003. In 2003, there was legitimate, well-known, respected opposition to Saddam. among the Shiites, among the Kurds, and don't really see that in Iran now. There isn't a standard, a symbol for people to follow, and that will make it very difficult. Troops on the ground with a country the size of Western Europe, I'm not sure if that's feasible either, but there are many options, and I think the US administration is wise enough to modify their position as the battle changes and as the battlefield changes.
Just to be clear, so there's no armed cross-border operation happening now from your territory in Iraq involving Iranian Kurds into Iran?
Not that I see, and you could argue that that's actually a detriment. Iranians, like everybody else, are very a nationalistic person, and I believe that if they fear that Kurds coming in from elsewhere will cause a split or a splintering of their country, this may actually unify the people and against this separatist movement. Then you have the complications of Turkey. Turkey will have legitimate concerns of this happening. You will have Turkish intervention against the Kurdish troops. At the same time, there is a problem with the Azeris. I think it's a very complicated scenario, and perhaps Kurds being tip of the spear is not the way to go.
Yeah. Well, there are many minorities, you're right, in Iran, and it's very complex as far as how it comes together. If you were to look into a crystal ball, how do you think this ends?
I think that Kurdistan needs to be a bridge, not a battlefield. And the Kurds are uniquely positioned as being your great allies and a partner and a neighbor of Iran. I think we're uniquely positioned to play a role in de-escalation when the time is appropriate, like my late father used to play that role. But what I see now, from what I'm seeing, is a weakened Iranian system, but the institutions, though very different to ours, are institutions and they remain solid. I think that once military objectives are achieved, I dare say that it will be the time for diplomacy. And at that time, we stand ready, as always, to stand with our friends and allies to try to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to this region that truly has suffered from far too many wars and far too many conflicts.
Dealing with the drone threat from Iran, because that's what we're seeing most in some of these Gulf countries.
Yes.
Are you worried about attacks and how to defend against those drone attacks that come in swarms?
Not to sound flippant, so it's not our first rodeo, and we have absolutely no defense against any drones. So I think the less time spent worrying about it, the better.
Yeah, I got you. And the U.S. is attempting to deal with all of those threats together. It's very interesting to hear your perspective. If you were to say the thing you're most worried about, what is it?
The humanitarian crisis. I think the people of the Middle East have suffered enough, and I urge all sides to try to look at a less bloody way to resolve our issues. I understand that, and I do believe, I genuinely
Yeah, well, America and Israel don't care about that. Let's be real.
believe that Mr. Trump, in his heart, wants peace. And I understand the theory of peace through strength. And I also think that when the day comes to acknowledge victory, there will be grace in that victory, and we may be able to have dialogue, and we may be able to resolve this issue through the only way that will make a long-lasting peace, and that's dialogue, stability, peace.
Here, while oil prices, which fuel economies across the Gulf, also continue to surge. Now, leaders in the region are warning of a wider disruption to energy exports that may trigger a major downturn in the global economy. 1 week into this war, the battlefield is still expanding faster than diplomacy. And the question facing leaders across the Gulf and beyond is whether the next phase brings escalation or any meaningful effort to step back from the brink. Kelly.
Imtiaz, thank you very much. President Trump on Friday approved a new $151 million arms sale to Israel. Now, that deal bypassed congressional approval after Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued an emergency waiver. This morning, the president will attend the dignifying transfer of the 6 Americans killed in the opening days of the war with Iran. CBS News' Nicole Killian is traveling with the president in Doral, Florida. Nicole, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Kelly. President Trump is addressing Caribbean and Latin American leaders here at his resort in.
Yeah, this is also incredibly fucking stupid. The Donald Trump shield of the Americas shit that he's doing with like all the compradors, all the right wing fucking fascists in Latin America. That's the other play that they're going for. Latin America obviously is like much easier to take control over in comparison to Iran, obviously, because like